everyone. Let's spend a few minutes talking about your final module assignment, which is going to be our signature assessment for English 241. In this assessment, we're going to be looking at the British landscape and how it has come to be a symbol of British nationalism. So, wide open assignment, but I'm going to give you some parameters to stay between. First thing you're going to do is read this article by Paul Redman, What Three Landscapes Tell Us About English Identity. And this also has some particular British landscapes in it, certainly not all of them, just a couple. And just to kind of give you an idea of the relationship between how people feel about their environment and their idea of being a nation, which is kind of what naturalism is about, national identity. So I have a quote here for you by John Agnew, and you're going to keep this quote in mind as you write your research essay of a minimum of 1,200 words. So that's roughly 3.5 pages, something like that. So he wrote an article, Landscape and National Identity in Europe, England versus Italy in the Role of Landscape and Identity Formation. If for some reason you want to read that entire essay, you certainly may just do a Google search for that. But I just pulled out this quote. He says, in the literature in English on landscape and identity, England is often taken as a paradigm case of the significance of a certain idealized landscape as symbolic of national identity. All right, to break that down for you, what we're really talking about here is this idea. Significance of a certain idealized landscape. What do we mean by idealized? Describing something that is either A, not really there. Think about the landscapes in Gawain and the Green Knight and some of the other works we've read, Pilgrim's Progress, Gulliver's Travels. So in all of these works, we have characters moving through a landscape that is not real. It's a created, a fictional world. B, it can also mean taking a real landscape and idealizing it, right? Making it nicer or more prominent than it really is, right? So that's the first part of that. So they take a certain idealized landscape and make a connection between that landscape and national identity. So it would be like somebody in the United States writing about the Statue of Liberty as being symbolic of America, okay? So you're going to look at the landscapes in these writings that I have a list of on the next few slides and talk about how those are symbolic of British national identity. Okay? So you have two prompts to choose from. In the first one, we're going to look at those country estates again. In Penshurst's, Johnson's to Penshurst, Lanier's A Description of Cookham, and Marvels upon Appleton House. So those are three that we've looked at. You're going to determine how these three estates that they're writing about either supports or rejects the idea of national identity. So you can go in the other direction. You can say that these country estates are kind of anti-nationalist. Maybe they're just personal but not national identity, right? So you can go that route. And you will have to do all three, right? 1, 2, 3. This isn't a selection of which one you like. You're going to do all. If I say both here, I meant to say all three. In the second prompt, you can discuss the role of landscapes, either real landscapes or ones made up for the poem, in all of the following poems about the creation of a national identity based on the natural environment. So you're going to look at how nature is idealized or presented in a realistic fashion of Finch, Thomas Gray, Goldsmith, and Crabbe. Now, some of these works you've read and some you haven't. They're all in your textbook. If you're not using the textbook, they're all available online. Just do a Google search for them. You'll find all of them. So we're still looking at this idea of national identity because that is our key indicator for our assessment for English 241, right? So that's something we have to keep in mind. No matter what else you do in this essay, it has to be focusing on this creation of a national identity. You can include other works that we've read that feature other landscapes, but you have to do our assigned titles. Anything else you talk about is optional, but our assigned titles for both of these prompts have to be at the forefront. I'm looking for 3 academic sources. Again, just continuing using sources, practicing using sources, and I've got a list of things I'm not looking for, right? Free essay sites, student papers, etc. The things that you would know that you can't use, right? What kind of things are you researching? Well, again, it just depends on what you're looking at. You can think about maybe researching what does British nationalism mean. Maybe see some examples of what other artists have talked about when they talk about nationalism. What's the history of British landscape writing? These are just some things that you can type into Google search, right, and see what you come up with, or the ProQuest databases and things like that. You can investigate the works themselves. So you might look up Johnson's to Penshurst and national identity, or nationalism, or landscape, right? Just try some different combinations. Or you can go wider and research what Romanticism is. You can talk about the picturesque or the sublime, and specifically Romanticism and the environment. So these are just some options for things you could conceivably research. And finally, you need to introduce and paraphrase your sources carefully. This is not an assignment you can revise. If you're still having problems with introducing sources and citing them correctly, please review those presentations in the Module 2 assignment folder. I gave you guys several lectures walking you through how to introduce sources and reminding you to paraphrase and not quote. All right? So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. As I mentioned in the office hours video, this is a new topic. I haven't used this one before, so even though it may seem obvious to me, it may not be as clear to you, so you need to be asking questions if you have any. Otherwise, I look forward to reading these interesting essays.